who've asked, it's difficult with so many families coming from further afield or internationally to put these in the calendar. So we're going to live stream this today so other families have the opportunity. But I've challenged my team to put some short presentations together for you, just to talk about the Shawnigan educational model, some of the new developments going on, and I thought I'd launch. I start with all our staff meetings and many of my other meetings, I splash up the mission and values of Shawnigan, and I think not only do we educate the students about these values, my expectation of the staff is that they subscribe to these values, and we're sure you as parents have chosen Shawnigan because of these values and your expectation of us to deliver those values. We have had Disney on campus for the last month. I think it's been a little logistically challenging, but they've been super flexible in the last couple of days, and I believe they're filming up in the woods. If you don't know, they are filming a children's book series, Upside Down Magic, and the first film is due to be released next summer, and this is part of the launch of the Disney Plus channel, which they hope will rival Netflix going forward. But it's been an exciting new initiative at Shawnigan. Our campus has been completely transformed. The library looked completely different, Mitchell Hall, Marion Hall, even our front doors. I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for releasing some of the images of the film. And some of our students took the initiative to go to Duncan on an audition to be extras. And there's actually one student, and there's a staff child as well. I think there's a parent in here whose son, also in fact the student himself, is here, who I hope they were paid handsomely, stroke lucratively, for their extra work. And this is what chapel looked like last week. It was completely reimagined with this sort of, looks like the sort of top of a barrel, circular barrel in here. So our chapel, I think, has never looked as clean as it does today. It's been super polished by the Disney team. And there's a lovely film producer running the project called Drew, and he wrote, if you can't read it, if you're at the back, "Thank you for your team's support and guidance in making Shawnigan Lake School and its beauty the lead character in our story." I think they've been thrilled to find themselves on our spectacular campus and all the filming opportunities that presents. The other picture is Renfrew House at a night shoot, which was spectacular in its filming. I, of course, have got completely carried away for the next slide, and I'm rather disappointed that they didn't cast this member of staff. Here she is. You know her as our Director of Admissions. Where are you, Gaynor? She's truly wonderful and pretty magical. But Disney's loss, Gaynor, that they didn't want you. We continue to pride ourselves at Shawnigan as to our house system. I think all your children will say independently that they are in the best house. And that's absolutely the way it should be at Shawnigan, that they feel that loyalty, that engagement with their peers in house, but also their connection with their house director, the residential teams supporting them. And it's something we recognize at Shawnigan. If they're not happy in themselves, and if they're not happy in their house, it's very difficult for them to then perform academically on the co-curricular piece. We really have to ensure here the health and wellness of our students. And that's also health and wellness for our staff who are delivering the students. And it's something we've been talking about as a staff team last week. We've also just opened up Stanton House, which is a grade 8 house for girls. It used to be, many years ago, a part of Renfrew House. It's by Lakes and Ripley's, and then it became staff accommodation. And that's a pretty exciting project, and it's been spectacularly reimagined. And it's been named after Eleanor Stanton, who was the first. I've been doing some research about her this morning in preparation for addressing the whole school this afternoon. But she was the second female member of staff here. Lonsdale is our founder. The first female member of staff was his sister, and then his sister persuaded Eleanor Stanton to come in. And she did everything from being chief gardener to nurse to mending clothes to coaching physical education and to teaching cricket, which of course appeals to my English heart. And that's the logo we've designed, which is, there's an oak tree just outside Lakes, but near Stanton House, which Lonsdale took an acorn from Sherwood Forest of Robin Hood fame in the 1930s and planted it there, and it's now grown into Lonsdale's Oak, where there's a plaque. And Arden Gill, our wonderful new house director, chose it as her symbol, this idea of growth of those grade 8 girls. You'll all know the Shawnigan Stag. I walk past it every morning on my commute from my house into my office. And there's always this reassuring message, if you actually read the plaque, that the stag will take care of everyone who enters into these grounds. And I find that extremely reassuring message, and I hope the students walk past it and notice that. And I hope you as parents also feel reassured that we as a school are in loco parentis of your children, you trust us with your children, and our responsibility to take absolutely fantastic care of them. And I think as a school, we pride ourselves on our pastoral care. That's the whole staff gathering last week, and that African proverb of it takes a village to raise a child, and that we have so many eyes on your children at any one time to support them. Something I've been thinking a little bit about at Shawnigan is, and talking to the leadership team, is we are in a remarkable location here. Beautiful British Columbia, Vancouver Island, and it's also part of our responsibility to make sure our students don't just operate in the bubble of the Shawnigan campus. Partly maybe why you've chosen to send your children here is it is a spectacular landscape, huge number of learning, educational opportunities for them, and it's our responsibility really to connect them with the landscape, Canadian values, Canadian culture, local history, Indigenous understanding, and much more. My accent is, of course, absolutely misleading, but I do recognize that we are a Canadian boarding school through and through, and within that, we welcome people from across Canada, across North America, across the world to our school. We recognize and celebrate diversity and difference, but fundamentally, we're a Canadian school, and we're certainly not a British boarding school. And I think when I've spoken to parents, when I've spoken to students, I've spoken to alumni, spoken to staff, everyone always picks out community, that what we try to do here is develop a sense of community that any student can feel part of, and any staff member. And we hope, just talking to some parents at the entrance, how the parents enjoy connecting with the community as well. You're as excited as your children as they chart their journey through Shawnigan. This was the best email of the summer I received. I'm sure you can imagine, as headmaster, I receive thousands of emails every week, and some not always bringing me good news. And one parent, after closing day, wrote to me, and she listed about 25 members of staff who'd made a significant impact on her child. And it must have been a 5,000-word email, because she also wrote a paragraph in tribute to each of those members of staff, which was fantastic for me to know that our team is held in high regard. And she finished with this message: they shaped her, nurtured her, and loved her. They co-parented, all in the best possible way. We'll always be grateful to the faculty and staff at Shawnigan for what they have given our child. We absolutely strive to do that for every child that comes into the school who we're responsible for taking care of. I'm sure you will have heard me talk about these before, but for me, these are the fundamentals of Shawnigan. Conversation, and I think Matt will talk a little bit later about our social media and phone policy, but how important conversation is as part of the experience here, that we encourage teenagers to consider what is compassion and how do we express compassion and how do we build a sense of community. Because one day, whatever community they end up in, we want them to be positive contributors to the communities they find themselves in. And just looking at all those new students yesterday, the courage of all these students stepping in to the new world of Shawnigan and how they have to draw on that well of courage every single day. And the returning students as well. Every day requires an element of courage from our students and how we want to support them through that. If you look at our mission, we aim to deliver a well-rounded education. So we've built this into the itinerary today. We're going to have an update on academics, the exciting new developments with the British Columbia curriculum. I've also challenged Greg, our Director of Careers and Guidance, about current career trends. How do we best future-proof our students? I've also got to consider, how do we future-proof our staff? How do we future-proof the school? But how do we best prepare our students for the future ahead of them, and also talk about that connecting with the landscape. How do we best do that? And Matt's going to finish talking about the sort of student life update. The leadership team and the board spent 2 days on a retreat last February, and we spent a significant portion of that talking about future-proofing. What is the new constant? What is the new normal? And one line that really resonated in it was from our vice chair of our board, who's actually about to become the chair of the board, who's going to be the first female chair of Shawnigan's board in its 102-year history. And she said the pace of change will never be as slow as it is today. So how is Shawnigan evolving to meet that change, and how are we best preparing our students in today's world? And we kept coming back in that conversation is, what does it mean to be human? And the Rev, our chaplain, is fantastic at talking to the students about that. Our house directors are wonderful leaders in guiding the students through that, but also how we're adapting our educational model at Shawnigan to teach the students what it is to be human. And these are the 4 C's of future-proofing. And we need to look at what are those human skills: creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving, communication, collaboration. We are not serving our students. In fact, we're being grossly negligent if we aren't looking at the co-curricular and the academic programs and the residential programs to ensure we are delivering those skills for the students as they step into university, careers, and communities beyond that. So I'm hoping our team's going to talk to that, and then we'll do a Q&A session afterwards, and you're welcome to fire any questions at us. First up is Wendy, who's assistant head and in charge of the academics of the program. So over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. And I'm actually going to, yes, let's cut for good afternoon. I'm actually going to take a second and turn over to Tom Lupton, who will introduce himself, and he's going to talk about the new curriculum, which some of you may be very well versed in, and others you're just learning about little bits of it. So I'm just going to turn over to Tom for a second.
Thanks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Lupton. I'm in charge of making sure that we're following the new curriculum that BC has rolled out. It's a pretty exciting time for us. I said to a colleague, Craig, I said, I'll come up and talk for a couple of minutes. And he said, oh yeah, that'll be plenty of time to educate everyone on completely transforming education in the province. 2 minutes will be fine. So I was trying to keep to 2 minutes, actually. Just going back to Larry's slide from before, where it says here that creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving, communication, collaboration, really that is the new curriculum. The new curriculum is focusing absolutely on these 4 things. The old days, we used to have these big binders filled with all the content that kids need to memorize and then regurgitate on a test, and then they would promptly forget about 5 minutes afterwards. We recognize that in this age of accelerated change, an age of disruption, that forcing kids to memorize reams of information actually doesn't serve them very well. Yeah, they still need to know stuff, but figuring out what are the things they actually need to know in order to achieve creative thinking, critical thinking, good communication, and good collaboration. This is the trick of the new curriculum. So what the new curriculum has done is it's kind of flipped the ends and the means. So we're still teaching the really important content that we need to know in senior level science or social studies or English. But what we're doing is we are using critical thinking and problem solving as the excuse to teach the content. So let me give you an example. For instance, you might say in your Science 11 class that we're going to really work on collaborative work, because collaborative work really is, even universities, they're heading down this road. We're then going to use, photosynthesis, for instance, as the content in which we will then create collaborative work. So the content still matters. It's just that we're being way, way more intentional in teaching these, what used to be called the soft skills, but are actually the skills that will make our children way more resilient in the future, way more adaptable to change, and way more prepared for a future that is really unknown. And the rate of change is, we are living in a time of acceleration. So the new BC curriculum is designed around that model. And so this year is the first year that it is in place for K-12. So all schools across the province have to embed this new curriculum in their teaching. because it's our first go of it in grade 11 and 12 in particular, that's what we're doing. We're going to work really hard as a staff and as a community to build in this new curriculum to make sure that we're teaching your children as best as we possibly can. The good news is we've got phenomenal staff and faculty here, so it won't be a problem. It's just we're going to have to work pretty hard to do it. So it's a really exciting time for us. It's a great challenge for us, but it is absolutely the right thing for us to be doing. And the new curriculum in BC is the most progressive curriculum you will find in any jurisdiction anywhere in North America and possibly the world. And this isn't just me saying it. This is much smarter people saying that too. So it's a really exciting time for us, and it's a good challenge for us all. So that in a nutshell is what we're doing in the new curriculum. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Just some changes that your students and your children will feel over the next little while in terms of the way Shawnigan works through our day and things like that. We have made some changes to our timetable. I'm not sure if you've ever had a phone call home from your child and said on the end of a Wednesday, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, I've been running left, right, and center. The last couple of years, we've sort of filled their Wednesday with way too many changes and way too many things going on. So based on feedback from the students to their advisors and their teachers and the work of a timetable committee that we have formed, the students will be having the same schedules Monday to Friday so that they're used to the routine and things like that. And by doing that, we have made a time on Wednesday afternoon where all of the students every week will have a chance to meet with their advisors. This is something that some of you may have experienced a great relationship between an advisor and your student, others maybe not. And often it's finding the time to have those conversations that just wasn't there. So we've built in a time on Wednesdays for those meetings to happen. And we will be delivering some of the elements of the new curriculum, whether it be some of the career education or some of the health pieces through their advisors or through some of the other programs at the school. So the advisors will be meeting with the students on a much more frequent basis. The other thing we have looked at is we fill our schedule with lots of things, and for teenagers, sleep is very, very important. So how do we balance the needs for them to get their curriculum, them to get more sleep, staff to be able to do professional development, students to learn many of the Shawnigan Life Program elements that Matt might refer to later? How do we marry all of that? So what we're doing this year is something that the students will be informed about called X blocks. And about 7 or 8 times during the year, we're going to give the students a restorative sleep-in. They're just going to lose a block of their time. They can sleep in, and it gives us an opportunity as staff to do some of the professional development as we continue to learn to work with the new curriculum, as Tom has talked about. On other occasions, they will lose the last block on a Wednesday, and that's when we're going to use it as an opportunity to bring in some of those speakers that we want all the students to hear from. Also opportunities for them as the grade 8 and 9 programs or the 11s and 12s to meet with guidance, just sort of fitting those in times where we're not shoehorning one more thing in, we're giving them a break from something else so that we can deliver these important parts of our program. The last change that your students will feel is, I'm not sure, how many of you have a child who's in an AP course this year? Some of you, great. So for those who don't know, advanced placement courses are courses taken by a few grade 10s, but many of our 11s and 12s are that high-level enrichment course that they can take. And for most schools, especially in the United States, who teach AP courses, they start the program mid-August. They've been in school for a few weeks, whereas we are now just starting school and getting into those programs. So the AP teachers sometimes are looking for more opportunities for resources and things to really make sure our students are ready for those really heavy 4-hour exams in May. So just to let you know, there will be an expectation of our AP students this year that they will be taking prep home over some of our holidays. That's part of doing a university level course, so that will be something for some of them that might be a bit new, but some of the teachers will be sending modules home with them. The other change is from the College Board that runs the AP courses is all the students will register in September and October for the course. And they are stuck in that course in terms of they have to follow it to completion and they have to write the exam at the end without it, or otherwise there is a bit of a financial impact and a chargeback. But what it does is the teachers will suddenly have a whole bunch of new resources available to them. They're going to be getting a lot more practice exam questions, different things. AP realizes they haven't been giving enough resources for enough of the students to find success. So there will be a lot more engagement with those students, with the curriculum, and practicing those exams so that we can ensure not only are they ready if they want to use that exam as in university to fast track, or if they really need a high mark on that exam when it happens in May. Okay, so those are some of the changes. And as I said to Larry this morning when we were chatting, I'm going to make an effort this year a lot more through the parent news that comes out to you every Friday, just to give you more academic updates of things that we're doing and some of the other programs that we are starting this year, just to give you feedback on how they're doing. And then the other piece would be the timetable committee. At some point this year, we'll be reaching out to parents for some feedback, anything you would like to share with us that will help us as we look ahead to next year, and whether we have to change our timetable drastically or make some minor tweaks to really help our students achieve the success that they need. Okay? I'm going to turn over to Craig Brown now, head of our guidance department. He's going to take you through some slides.
Thank you very much. So for those who don't know me, I've worked with a lot of you before with some of your sons or daughters. My name is Craig Brown. I'm the Director of University Guidance, and this is my 4th year here at Shawnigan. In the University Guidance Office, we have the pleasure of working with our students on all things post-secondary. So it's a pretty exciting office most of the time. But as we're looking at different ways, as Larry mentioned, to engage our students, to get them to think about, to reflect upon the learning that they're doing outside of the classroom or the learning they're doing inside the classroom, and what it's going to mean when they leave Shawnigan. So I've got a little quiz, not a quiz, something I would show our grade 10 career life education class. These are a sampling, we look at different ones every year, of future jobs, of people, again, like Tom said, people more intelligent than I who are saying these are some of the future jobs that our students might be part of. Anyone here tell me what a rewilder might do? Any guesses on a Correct. So maybe we're taking a parking lot that we have too many parking lots. We're going to create green space. How do we get that green space to grow again and to become something we can use? So these are the types of things to get students to think outside of the box, to move away from all great positions, but to think of something different besides business, maybe engineering, or something specific that they sign up for because they've heard of it, not because they want to do it, but because they just think it's the safest path possible. So these are a few, there's many, many more. But to get to that level, you need education. And so when we're preparing our students for post-secondary, we need to start at maybe a higher level and take a wide perspective. So some of the stats, this is within Canada, where the majority of our students apply. Our students applied to 9 different countries last year, but Canada still leads the way. 2011 was that peak of that cohort that were going to universities directly out of high school, at that traditional age. But more and more universities in Canada are accepting international students. That's a massively growing population. But the other part that I find more interesting is that component of non-traditional students, of students who are older. They're on their 2nd, 3rd, 4th career, and they need education to help them with that career. I just read an article recently about a 35-year-old Navy SEAL who's going to be attending Yale next year. Think about the complications that makes for a post-secondary, what they need to adjust to make their school available to a different learner like that. So it's becoming competitive. We all know that schools are becoming increasingly competitive. What can we show? What can our students demonstrate to universities to make sure that they get its deserved spot? It used to be for many schools, maybe 4 or 5 grade 12 courses. That was it. Your whole high school experience boiled down to English, maybe math, and 2 sciences. Oh, don't you want to know about all these great things I did? No, just tell us those 4 courses. We're fine, thanks. But now more schools recognize it's more competitive. We want to know, we want writing samples. How good are you at a writer? How can you communicate? Well, maybe we'll do a video interview. We'll record you and we'll watch how you present. And we're also going to look at your grade 11 and 12 grades and see a history, see a trend, and see how you're developing as a student. Those traditional programs like engineering, business, maybe some sciences, computer sciences, they're filling up fast. They're becoming more competitive. So universities are trying to adapt and create different programs. They're also trying to respond to the working community, to what employers want. One great example is Ryerson University in Toronto, has a great business program. To graduate from Ryerson University now, you also need to do a course on Excel, a course on networking. We're graduating these students who have these amazing degrees. They've never gone into a new audience and said, "Hi, I'm Tom, pleased to meet you. Let me tell you about what I do." They've never had to do that, so they're getting these skills before they leave. It's those, again, attributing to those common sense aspects that might not be so common. One of the more exciting things I see is this micro-credentialing or micro-certificates. I talked about those learners coming back for their second, third credential, and they're saying, I've got a degree, I've got all those courses, I need to know how to do this, and I need it quickly. So universities are responding to those needs, and they're changing how they teach. These tie to what the headmaster spoke about, the core skills that we're trying to provide to our students. We had the president of Huron University, a really strong liberal arts school, come and talk to our students last year. And what he said, he really spoke to soft skills being necessary skills. With automation coming in with so many of our positions, we need to be able to get our students to have these skills before they leave. And they're very important skills and skills that cannot be replaced no matter how good the automation process is. So how do we prepare our students for that? How do we give them those skills? Well, one of them is just showing them what's out there. We had 97 different universities come to our school last year. We visited a number of other ones. We had a very successful career day. Some of you were great in helping me out with that. Again, introducing our students to these new ways of doing things and new pathways to which they can accomplish what they want to accomplish. For that connection to mentoring, mentoring is a massive component of future education or future employment, being able to use social capital. So how do you introduce our students to social capital? Well, there's LinkedIn. That's a great site. We've got a really unique service here called Shawnigan Connect. What we're going to do is start using our grade 11 and 12 students, reaching out to Shawnigan alumni, Shawnigan parents, Shawnigan staff, and recognizing what social capital is and what it can lead them into in the future. What are my notes here? And then the capstone project, I'll touch on that a bit on the next slide. The capstone project is part of the new curriculum that we're bringing in here in British Columbia. There's two courses you may have heard your son or daughter mention, Career Life Education and Career Life Connections. They're both required for graduation. They're both worth 4 credits. And what they do is they amalgamate everything I've spoken of and what all the work our teachers are doing and bringing it into a way so the student can then reflect upon it and communicate to their peers, to us, to you as parents, what they've learned and what high school has meant to them. So some of the new tools and guidelines we're using for that, the new Ministry curriculum, all our grade 12s, if you have a grade 12 child this year, they'll be the first year that we're working on this capstone project with them. So we'll be working with them during these X blocks, different times in the week, to make sure they are fully prepared and have the time and tools and skills necessary to really think about what their high school university meant to them. My Blueprint is the software we use to allow students to document and record and put onto a shareable platform what they've learned outside of the classroom. So it's those presentations they've given, it's the tours they did. Where can I put that information so I always remember it and I can share it with my advisor and my parents? That's on My Blueprint. So if you have a son or daughter in grade 10 or 11 or 12, ask them about My Blueprint. Get them to show you what's on My Blueprint. Because at the end of the day, we're giving these, we can add more software, we can do more tests, but we really want students to take ownership of this process and be the ones leading the charge. It's a quote that I really like from Hunter S. Thompson, that we want them to make that choice. We don't want to do the choices for them, but we have to give them, as I said, the tools and the skills and the confidence to make those decisions on their own. Thanks, everyone. I'll pass it over to Nigel.
Thank you, Craig. Some of you may know me, Nigel Mays. I've taught some of your sons and daughters in chemistry and robotics and astronomy and all kinds of other fun things. I have a new role going forward this year as a director of our co-curricular programs. And in that role, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about our trips and tours and our EDGE program. I'm hoping that you got a rather large document from me over the summer detailing all 25 or 26 different trips and tours that will be happening over the course of the year. It's a hugely rich program that covers cultural, it covers some of our fine arts and activities, and certainly there's an element of our sports tours, and there's a lot of service learning based trips in there as well. The feedback I've had from you so far is thank you. I can plan my holidays and my finances as well. So if it allows you to do that better, then I've succeeded. As you're reading it, please let me know if you have any further feedback, how we can make this even more useful to you next year. I'd appreciate that. I would like to spend a little bit more time talking about our outer edge programs and our edge programs, and perhaps defining that for you and giving you a really good perspective of why we're doing it. This is part of our backyard. We are so inspired by the place that we live in Vancouver Island. Yet we recognize that all too often our students leave our gates in grade 12 without really appreciating what's around them. So we're endeavoring to do a better job of introducing them to the culture and landscape of the place that they will be calling home for 1 to 5 years. And hopefully giving them some experiences that they will want to follow up with their families and their children in the future. Both of these images are within 50 kilometers of where you're sitting. The first one is the Malaspina Galleries on Valdez Island. The second one is part of the Juan de Fuca Trail. And that's actually Sombrio Beach, and believe it or not, that's in March. And we're in Canada. Doesn't seem quite right, but we live in a stunning, stunning paradise. And we have an outer edge program which is really about outdoors, environmental stewardship, and that program runs with our grade 8s and our grade 9s. Each one of those students will endeavor to do a group camping experience as well as a journey-based experience. Our grade 9s on September 20th will be going out to do a 2-night, 3-day trip on the Juan de Fuca Trail, or a kayaking trip over to Portland Island, part of Gulf Islands National Park. And again, this is all within an hour of us. We have with us an extremely experienced outdoor education coordinator. One of the most complicated things that he has endeavored to do with school-age children, younger middle school-age children, is 12 independent groups on 20-day journeys simultaneously. And so Eric McDonald, I'd like to introduce Eric McDonald, and he'll be coordinating that program for our 8s and 9s. Thank you, Eric. All of this is intentionally designed to help kids be uncomfortable. None of these are supposed to be easy, but they are definitely supposed to be enjoyable and fill the students with a sense of accomplishment. And that links us into our EDGE program. So EDGE stands for Experience, Development, Gratitude, and Engagement. And I'm going to loosely translate this as it was explained to me a number of years ago by the founder of the EDGE program, Mr. Peter Yates. And essentially he said if the students have a challenging experience that will develop the individual student, lead to gratitude, and then deeper engagement with what they are doing. This is our premium service learning opportunities at this school. And they always involve immersing students in a different culture, often a different language, doing service work. And it's always about the reflection on the individual student and hoping that they will take that into their lives and develop an ethos and an understanding of why service is so important in their communities and in their adult lives. So we have, I believe, 6 different EDGE trips going out this year. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Galen Loisel, who's our EDGE coordinator. And thank you, Galen. And so he's responsible for coordinating trips to Costa Rica. We have a really unique one put together by Mr. Massimo. Mr. Massimo, are you here? In the back? Which is an EDGE China trip. This is a unique trip in that we are actually, it's donor funded, and we are visiting a school and working at a school that is sponsored by a donor in rural China. And we have a Peru trekking and engagement with indigenous culture in Peru, EDGE Tanzania, and also a partnership with Lester Pearson College with an Edge Kenya trip, so some service work in Kenya. We have a couple other initiatives that we're trying to put forward, and Galen is endeavoring to make all of these trips carbon neutral, so students will be doing some work before and afterwards to actually try to offset the carbon footprint that these trips entail. And we have some other unique things in play as well. We realize that we don't have to travel to the far ends of the earth to engage in meaningful cultural experiences and service. And so you can anticipate from us that we will have an Edge Vancouver Island, hopefully by the end of this year. And next year we're hoping to have Edge Northern Canada. So we can, again, re-engage with that type of service work more locally. And so those are some initiatives that myself and the team that I've introduced you to are working on. We also have Edge as a bullet point for any faculty that are organizing trips and tours. And so some of our hockey program do this best already. They're always engaging in service in communities that they go to outside of Shawnigan. And so we would like elements of Edge to be in every single thing that we do. Ultimately, my objective is for that philosophy to be part of the DNA of Shawnigan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nudge. As I start my 4th year at Shawnigan, it's so nice to see you. So many more familiar faces every time I come back for another year, so welcome. I'll be very brief. I had the real honor and privilege of meeting with all of the new students today. Nigel Mays and myself were in the chapel, and it really helped me personally to really reconnect with what are our real priorities when you're trying to balance the need to not overload these grade 8 students together and all the way up to the grade 11s and 12s. It really forces me to really think, what are those priorities? What I focused on and what my message was, and I think it's appropriate to put to you guys just as a reaffirmation of what, in my role as assistant head in charge of student life, I anchored my message on 4 things. They were care, corners, doors, and discipline. The first one I think is the most important. At Shawnigan, we take care of each other. And that was the message that I said to the students that you'll probably hear me say time and time again more than anything else at Shawnigan. To take care of others, of course, you need to take care of yourself. We talked about that a little bit. And then once you've got your own self organized, then you can look and take care of the rest of the community. I really said in a simple form, you need to recognize what's out there, engage, make sure you're aware of what's happening, and recognize when somebody needs help. You there really need to look into your heart and you need to care. And that's something we can't teach you, but we can certainly encourage you. You need to want to make other people's lives better, and then you act, of course. And acting could just be a simple gesture. Are you okay? Did you remember that homework that you had to do? All the way up to looking to our student leaders, maybe then needing to talk to a staff member. So really, at Shawnigan, we take care of each other is something that really lies at the heart of what my job is. As we look forward and reimagine a lot of things that we do at Shawnigan, it's also really important to look back at some of the traditions and some of the things that I've really inherited. Don't cut corners in the quad, because if you cut corners in the quad, who knows? You cut corners in life, and that's, I think, a real message that I broadcast or repeated. At Shawnigan, we hold doors for each other. Don't just go through the door and let it slam behind you. Have a quick look over your shoulder, see if there's somebody else that you can be aware of. So just little things, but certainly put forward with importance to the new students, and it will be repeated to the returning students as well. I went into discipline then, and part of my role as assistant head in charge of student life is the sharp end of the discipline wedge. I really re-emphasized that discipline at this school is a whole community responsibility. From the senior students and the prefects to even the youngest grade 8. I said, you have a responsibility to monitor what's going on and help to make a safe, inclusive, well-disciplined community. Now, of course, discipline means don't do certain things, but also really be self-disciplined and practice what you should do, because a good degree of self-discipline will help you when you leave Shawnigan. It was a really message that I believe in. We went through the goal book and outlined all of the major school rules that we need to adhere to, and we went on from there. So those are the things, the care, the corners, the doors, and the discipline. I then went over the cell phone policy, and I've always braced myself a little bit when we send out something about cell phones and how we're going to manage technology, cell phones in particular. Generally, the letter, the guidance that we sent out, or the information that we sent out, it was very well received. And it's always, we pause for thought when we take away something or limit something's use, rather than encourage and educate young people how to use something better. With cell phones, after expert guidance, after listening to the student voice, after really getting a message from the teachers about what works best, as you know, we've decided from grade 8 to grade 11, students are required to leave their cell phones in their dorms. From grade 8, 9, and 10 students, they are required to turn their phones in to their house directors, to a charging port in the boarding house, so that they can get a good night's sleep. Even the most cynical students, once we went through this last year, they said, you know what, Mr. Seaby, I may not be crazy about this new rule, this new process, but I can understand why you're doing it, and it has made me healthier, and I agree with it. So that's the cell phones. The X blocks. In my role of promoting happy, healthy community here at Shawnigan, the X blocks are a time that we've set aside in the curricular day to really deploy, to really put the content of the Shawnigan Life curriculum in place. So this is everything outside of the sports, the fine arts, the academics, and the boarding house specific lessons that our students are learning. It is everything else. It really encompasses core health, healthy relationships education, drug and alcohol education, cyber safety and digital literacy, and also dipping our toe into mindfulness, which is increasingly becoming something that we really should educate our students in. How to just hit the pause button, self-regulate, and balance one's life. And those 4 things will be part of the content that we deliver. Life skills, leadership development, and teamwork skills are some of the other parts that we'll put into these X blocks. We're using outside expertise and also really using the amazing staff and amazing expertise we have on site. So I'm really excited about the year ahead. It'd be great to have a chat if any of you have any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, so chemistry and physics actually, and biology, for instance, adopted an inquiry-based program when that curriculum was rewritten. I think it was roughly 2012 or 2013. And in fact, actually, those courses were ahead of the game in terms of the way in which those courses are approached. We still have a situation where the AP may only be reflected in 80% of the content of the provincial content. So once the students are finished the exam, there's always 1 or 2 little things that we have to tweak to meet the provincial content. And of course, they've generally exceeded the provincial content in other areas in the AP class. I still really believe that it's great for students in terms of getting value out of their education. And so many students have been able to use those courses to make things more manageable, less expensive at university. I have examples of students who have never taken a full course load and finished in 3.5 years because they managed to get credits for 7 or 8 APs. That's not a normal situation. The normal situation is a student has an area of specialty that they're really passionate about and wants to get deeper into it. The hard part is you're also satisfying an exam, so sometimes there's some compromises there.
No, I'd like Tom also answer as a teacher of 2 different AP courses.
Yeah, so AP is recognizing the changing climate as well, just like BC has, but is less dramatic in their change. Like BC really made a big change very quickly especially based out in New York. They have introduced a couple of courses in the last couple of years, AP Seminar and AP Research, to help address this, which is really based on developing good research skills for young people, which are fundamental for university success. So I think there's lots of merit in AP, and it is evolving. It's just not evolving as quickly as BC.
I'd like to add something to that as well. If you follow sort of education across the world, Finland for the last 5 years or so has been heralded as having the finest educational system. Funnily enough, BC is right up there as well. And the staff, when I arrived last year, given that I've been in schools that taught both the A-level and the International Baccalaureate, I think were terrified, having read my CV, that my mandate was to introduce International Baccalaureate here and cricket. That was their other great fear. Reintroduce cricket to Shawnigan. But the IB absolutely isn't on our radar, and partly because the BC curriculum is so incredibly progressive, so incredibly exciting, and if we can put that in harness with, probably the wrong verb, with the AP, so we're ensuring we're stretching the students and giving them the perfect springboard to university, that's extremely exciting. And part of this is also us re-educating our staff to think differently, think elastically, and to deliver that exciting curriculum and not just sort of step back into the safe familiar and do the old ways that we ourselves were taught in that way. I've also got a question. I'd love you, Craig, to talk about, you talked about Canada. What are the top 3 universities that our students are going to? Is there a trend towards Britain? What are the trends in universities at the moment? I was talking to a parent earlier about Minerva, this idea of spending a semester in a different campus across the world. University education is changing as well. What are the trends within Shawnigan?
Sure.
Our students?
Yeah, sure. Some of the trends within Shawnigan certainly have, within Canada, that's the first one. UVic, University of British Columbia. McGill was number 3 for our students last year, and so that's been slowly rising. The students who are interested in going to McGill to take some different programs there. United States, we usually have about 30-35% of our students applying to the US. Not all of them will go. A lot of students will use the US. So maybe some really selective schools within the US as their real reach schools. We all are probably aware of some of the controversies that have emerged out of some of the US admissions and the policies and what schools like USC are doing to address that. But US is still a really desirable location for our students. The UK is doing a lot in terms of individual universities and as a whole, as an education system, in promoting themselves to North American students. And so we're seeing a small but marked increase in students who are applying to different schools within the UK, and not necessarily Oxford and Cambridge, which are always kind of heralded as the only ones you apply to, but a number of different universities. Our number 1 UK school is St. Andrews University, and that's been consistent for a couple of years. Countries that are new globally, and certainly reflected in a small way in Shawnigan, are the Netherlands. The Netherlands have been increasing their offerings of strong English language undergraduate curriculum in all programs. About the only ones they have now as fixed in the Dutch language are medicine. So you can do engineering, fine arts programs all across the Netherlands, are great programs for very reasonable prices when you compare it to traveling outside of Canada. So that's some of the international trends. Was there something else?
No, I think that's perfect. Someone like you might say, like New York University, they've created all these satellite campuses. New York University, Abu Dhabi.
And Shanghai. So that's, yeah, so you touched on Minerva, the international aspect, and the schools like, one of the really interesting programs is Bocconi University in Italy has a world business program where you do 1 year, 2 years in Italy, 1 year in the United States, 1 year in Hong Kong, at top-ranked universities in these countries. Not unlike NYU, where you, part of your degree would be spending at least a year, if not 2, in a different country at a campus of that school. So you graduate with that credential, but you have all this amazing international experience. Minerva is another one that's been a fast-growing program where students move to a different country twice a year. And after 4 years of graduation, they might have 8, 7 countries that they've lived in, learned the language, understand the culture, and been taught by first-rank professors. So those are some of the university trends globally, and I think our students are starting to see those and the benefits of those.
And some of some of us have children of our own births. I'm just looking at Steve, my wife, in the back row, but Phoebe, our sort of 19-year-old daughter, we'd love her to come to UVic or UBC. She's determined not to go there for fear her mother turns up in Freshers Week, or keeps popping in every other week to apply social debt. So that's also, sorry, Phoebe. But please encourage your children to think, those are the most popular universities, UBC and UVic here, but also encourage them. Many of them are stepping into a much more sort of global career, and this is, talking to one parent earlier again, certainly when I was at university, I'd love to have travelled, but I did my undergraduate degree in one place, and maybe that suited me, being on a campus university somewhere. But actually it was the language students, those who were doing French, who would have that third year somewhere in France to make sure they were fluent and then come back for the fourth year. But universities are much more imaginative than that. Whatever the subject you're doing, you're reading English literature in England, and your university has got a partnership with some university with a fantastic creative writing school on the West Coast in California somewhere. But more and more students are thinking this is a really exciting way of seeing the world, making new friends internationally. So I encourage you as parents to be talking to the advisors, to be talking to the university office about what is right for your child. And our students really searching out all the options, because our prime objective is we match them, or help them match themselves with a great course and a great university. We've actually not done very well if they go somewhere in the first year, they're thinking this is the wrong course and the wrong university. It's absolutely finding what is right for them.
A couple of questions around the curriculum. What's the communication strategy look like for the students, the people who are challenged by change?
When
And then secondly,
what's the communication strategy around educating students about curriculum changes?
and then secondly, what does success look like to you? In the first whatever number of days or at the end of the year. How are you going to measure whether this curriculum has been successfully implemented here?
I'll do the communication one, and that would be all the new students today. They got to meet all of us, and as they went around, we told them little bits about it. But I think in the end, it's going to fall to each of those teachers who are taking on this new curriculum. I know with my class tomorrow, as I start with them, I'm going to talk about some of the things that they'll see different this year and how I deliver the grade 12 curriculum in math compared to what I've done before. Because I'm going to continue to work on what we've been working on with much more problem solving, in terms of use problem solving to learn that trigonometry, in terms of using teamwork to, do some kind of investigative inquiry project. So for me, it's going to be falling to those teachers and saying how they will uniquely embed some of those, what we have in they're called curricular competencies. How am I going to embed all of those skills into delivering my content? The content is, as Tom referred to, it's going to still be there, but you learn the content by learning those curricular competencies. So it's going to really follow the students. For the teachers to deliver to the students. We haven't thought about an information guide or anything, but I know the students going into grade 11, they've had this all the way along, so they sort of have experienced it. It's more some of the students from outside of those grade 12s who this is going to be the biggest shift for them, I would say. Do you want to?
And on the assessment piece is Wendy and her team at the moment are analysing some results for me, really looking at the AP results specifically as to how are we doing, how are we best serving the students, what do we need to do, and they've charted it for the last 15 years, but actually I also want to see with these sort of future-proofing elements of mind is how are we developing our academics, how are we using these, and also, I think Craig's point, what is it, how many, 70 or 80% of our students make it to their first 85, their first choice universities, which has found we need to maintain that, in fact, even reach even higher for that. But that's what we must be doing, serving the students in this well-rounded education that they get into their universities of first choice. It's a balance, because different universities are in different countries. Some universities, and I think the US is also not only an SAT scores, but is also interested in that sort of holistic presentation and how you present yourself and all the other experiences who built you. I think Canada is a little bit more results driven in that the statement, you have to present yourself. Yet if you do aspire to do Oxbridge, they say in their personal statement, we want 4/5 of your personal statement to be about the course and anything course related that you feel you've done to present yourselves, and then we want to know that you're sporting and you play the trombone. Because the academics want the best academic students applying to them. So Craig's rather delicate job is to help the students pitch to those different university systems and what they're looking for. And for places like Canada, which is purely about the results, it's sort of slightly countercultural to what we're trying to do here, because you're asking us, and we're seeking to do that, is to present the all-round, develop the whole student, but actually build that really also into our academics and make sure they succeed.
Okay, have you got a process to get feedback from the students about
So-
how this is being rolled out?
So one of the things, yes, we should be doing that, absolutely. The other piece with the ministry brought in are, instead of what we used to have, English 12 exam, or a few years ago, grade 10, 11, and 12 provincial exams, which were sit and regurgitate 60 facts that you may or may not know, shows really nothing. They have these new exams called numeracy and literacy. This year, all the grade 10s will write a numeracy and a literacy test. And the literacy, for example, you might think, oh, that's going to be taught in the English department, but actually it isn't. It's about how the students can take a body of work, analyze it, and then write about it. So it's actually something that all of our departments and our teachers will be focusing on. So the sample, for example, that some of your students may have written last year, the articles were all about environmental issues and dinosaurs and political issues. So it's gonna be something that falls to all of our teachers and all of our departments. The numeracy exam, again, the math department has really made sure that they are trying to teach some of the skills that are being tested on that numeracy. But it's also how the students can interpret a chart and a piece of data, which science and social and other courses are also doing. So I think how are we going to measure? We have a few years now of how our students have done on those exams, and we're going to be tracking those in terms of whether or not we are helping them to be prepared for those exams. And then next year there will be, not this year, but next year there will also be a literacy 12 exam that all of our students will have to write in British Columbia to show, I'm not sure how universities will use it yet, but it'll show whether they've developed those literacy skills. Can they articulate their opinions in a written work and things like that.
But other than just leaving it to an individual teacher to try and roll out their version of how this curriculum ought to be implemented, there's got to be something that underpins this curriculum that is common to the school as a whole that can be communicated to the kids. Because this is new for them.
So,
You know, this is new for them. Curriculum change at this kind of degree is different, it's new, it's challenging.
and I think that's useful feedback. I think Tom and Wendy and the Academic Council are working on that at the moment. But we also have the Ministry of Education coming in November, in late November, and it's great that they're coming for what's the equivalent of an inspection visit. But they give us an evaluation of how we're doing and also some recommendations as to how to do it better. And one other piece is that
Are you going to share that with the parents or share
I
some
think we've
version of it?
historically done that.
Well, there's bits of it that we can of course relay back to what we did well on and what they've asked us to work
Sure,
on.
I mean, that's helpful for us to know how well you're doing.
And one of the other things that the BC curriculum is saying is our Indigenous education, which is, it's been a challenge to our teachers. We did Pro D last week, all teachers, in fact, all staff. We did a day on Indigenous ways, because the teachers need to be delivering this. Now, for some of them, certainly in some of the Pro D I was in some staff, it was sort of airbrushed in their own history and their own learning, and now they're being asked to build that in. So we're working with the ministry to make sure we're providing that history, that social cultural context of Canada to the students as part of their learning. But I think every subject, the challenge is you should be bringing in Indigenous understanding and education to the students. And for me, that's very exciting. But actually, it's a little challenging for our teachers, so we need to create the right support structures to give them the confidence to do that. Any other questions?
The expectation for children, the full-time residents, between Saturday afternoon and Sunday evening.
Matt, you answered this question yesterday. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, sure. So So Saturdays are pretty straightforward. We'll keep chapel on a Saturday morning. There'll be house-based activities, flex time, and the students have a variety of things from tutorials, I believe, are on offer, and any other number of things into chapel, which is such an anchor of the week for the students. It's such an important part of the week. Many of you, I know, tune in to those Saturday chapels and enjoy it so much. Onto the sports, and then into what the evening has to offer. So from Saturday evening into the Sundays, we've got a teacher in charge, Erica Hamilton, many of you will know, science teacher. She is going to be organizing the weekend program. We've got 2 prefects who we've just been meeting with who are also going to contribute and help to plan what exactly the students want on the Sundays, as well as a number of other people who can staff the trips that are heading out. A few examples, there'll be Sunday ski trips up to Mount Washington, there'll be shopping trips to Victoria or Duncan, trips to the BC Museum, all the way down to just frisbee golf organized by the staff member on Sunday duty, with the prefects who are on duty, just really low-key, sign up if you're keen events for those Sundays. And it is that fine balance between giving students things if they want to do them, so there's certainly no risk of them being bored, but also giving them the opportunity just to sit back and laze around and recharge their batteries for the busy week ahead.
Can I interject one other thing? So a challenge to all the kids, the new kids that came to us this morning. Some of our best activities, I'm quite biased on this particular point of view, have actually been student initiated. In other words, a student have looked up and said, why don't we have this at Shawnigan? And they've written a proposal and they've come forward and got it off the ground, and now we have 20 or 30 or sometimes 50 kids that are enjoying that kind of an activity with them. And so onto the weekend programs, is something I would like to do, is to be able to respond to student-initiated clubs and activities, and that's something that I think will develop going forward. I know I've got 2 kids already right at me from the Astronomy Club and the Mountain Biking Club, so we'll be working on that.
Well, I'm going to sound a bit of a heretic in a second, but Shawnigan also, that's very much a model of beasting students around the program. We actually exhaust our students so they never have the spirit and energy to mutiny. And that's pretty old school in approach. And I think we need to be aware, with all the challenges students face in our tradition, just also to give them some downtime. And I think I dream of being bored. I remember as a child, my parents lived in the middle of nowhere, there were days that I would be bored or just go and read a novel. But again, back to that point, the world is as slow as it ever will be at this point. So I think we need to find space. And the other thing I hope is that as students go up through the school, we grant them greater independence. We don't need to beast the grade 11s and 12s around the parade ground, but they actually have more independence in terms of choice, that we're not dictating every single minute of the day to them. Because otherwise, if we are, we're not preparing them for university. It's a bit of a shock when they get to the campus of the university or the city and have all those freedoms. So that's a challenge again for this team, is how do we teach independence, teach initiative to our students going through. Please say to me, everyone's very young. That's what you're there for, please. If you do have further questions, it's been very stimulating for us to take these questions. This team will be out, I'll get them to go out ahead of you, but the front steps